Hello friends of Netcode-Hub channel. Thank you so much for taking time to watch videos and lessons from this channel. This channel is one of the channels that facilitate on .NET project, .NET lessons, which comprises of Blazor and also Mari applications. So we keep doing the videos and lessons whilst you also keep watching. So I really appreciate your effort and the time that you spend watching videos from this. So I will encourage you to do more, watch more, as this channel produces more lessons as well. We are on an era of mini projects. We have done one mini project already, and when you check the playlist, we have .NET Mari mini project. We have .NET Blazor mini project as well. So with these two Blazor projects and on the .NET Mari project, what we are doing here is, as soon as you are done creating an application for Blazor, we do the same thing for a mobile app. It could be Android, it could be iOS, it could be a desktop app that you can install. So we are doing the two ways, mobile and also web application. Now, when I'm done with this project, I'm going to create a new mobile app version for this application that you're going to talk about today. So, when you check the playlist, we have them over there, and you can watch over there as well. And also, let me say this. I thank one guy, is it Mose? He supported me, very well. Thank you so much for doing that. And if you want to support Netcode-Hub channel as well, you check the link, buy me a coffee. You can do that if you want to. And I'll appreciate that. That's a kind gesture of yours. Okay, so let's see. Now let's go through what you're going to do today. I believe you've read the title of this mini project already, but let me still go through again. It is, you are here to go through how to create a recipes application. First of all, recipes, what I understand here, it is a site or application whereby steps for food, a step for preparation of a dish or a food is kept. And you can just go in there and read the steps. You see some images and you can just pass on that images, and also you do the same thing by reading or following the steps. So we want to create a simple web application which is going to handle a recipe. That is the name, where it originates from, and maybe the steps or the procedures, and and I think something like that. Okay, so what about this video? What are the skills that you're going to get at the end of watching this video? One, you're going to know how to use Syncfusion component, especially the complex one, that is a DataGrid, because that is what we're going to use to add, to modify, or to manage our recipes, our procedures, and our origins. So that's what we're going to do. So here we're going to create a recipe. We're going to have a text box or a section whereby we can enter the recipe name, the description, and also the steps. We can have picture of pictures if you want to. Okay, and we can also rank them as well. And we're going to add the time that they need, or it needs, to prepare or to follow that recipe to come out with what you see. And also maybe we could have added some pictures with each step if you want to do that. When you have the basic, you can do that as well. And at the end of the day, we are going to store them somewhere. And specifically, we are talking about SQLite. And there is a mini project, so I would like to include SQLite, and that is a database management software that actually adds a file to your application. So you don't need to use an external SQL server to handle your database. You put everything in the application, so as soon as you publish it, you have the complete one, a database also inclusive. So that's what you're going to do. Okay, so a simple recipes application for web. It's a web app. And when I'm done with this, we're going to also create a mobile app or desktop app version for this. So do check the playlist. I'll leave the link in the description so you can also grab it over there. Aside from this, I'll leave documentation to the Syncfusion DataGrid and all the component that you're going to be using. I'll leave the documentation at the description, so you can click on it to just read more. And not all the features that you're going to implement here. So we're going to implement about 5% out of the feature that we have for this specific component. So you can just go in there and check the rest yourself, okay? And actually they're going to help you a lot in using the component as well. All right, also when I'm done, I'm going to leave the source code at the description. So check from the GitHub. The description contains a GitHub link. You click on it, you can just go in there and then clone it from the GitHub, and you can also modify. So if you want to see that, check the description. All the mini project that I have been doing, I always leave the link at the description, so check over there and you can see the GitHub link. You can just go in there and now clone this project that we have here, and you can also maybe you can just go through or review as well. Okay, so it's okay, let's start. So let's go through this. First of all, when you open the first page, that's the front page here, you can see we have this the buy recipes. And now here you can see we have home, we have the following recipes over here. And aside from that, we can click on any of these. Now if I click on this recipe, you can see I have the image displayed on top over here. I have the description for this recipe, the country of origin, where it originates from, the current rank as the number 1, and these are the procedures or the steps that involves in doing that. You can see from here it's supposed to be step 1, step 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So you can also do that. So these are the various steps. You can see there's a mini project, very simple. Now this is for the recipe, and now when you go to this manage recipes here, you're going to use the DataGrid, and you're going to select the recipe origin. So with the origin, you can see from here they are all together now. So if I choose an origin here, you can see if I want Ireland, I'm going to have a look at only a recipe from Ireland, okay? And these are the 3 recipes over here. Now if I click on choose Scotland, I have only 1. If I choose any other, Arizona, England is 2. Arizona, maybe nil, no record for Arizona, Italy. And I could check how the flow it is. It doesn't keep long. There's no refresh like a reload, a page reload. It is just happening between this DataGrid. Okay. You can also search. So you can also search for the whole recipe as well. So maybe if I want to get this, maybe Irish, I pass in the Irish. And as soon as I hit on enter, I'm going to have the one that comes in with this Irish. You can see how I have this over here. Okay. Now aside from that, I can also go to manage procedures. So as I have this at the recipe by the origin, I can also go to the manage procedures, and you can see these are the procedures here. So if I want to add, I click on this add. I have add procedure. Okay, so this is a step. I can pass in the title over here. Then I'm going to choose the origin here. So this origin is the okay. So here's supposed to be select a recipe. Now this is the recipe supposed to be. That is what you see here. The recipe type that you want to write for. You can set the duration over here, and you can just go in there for time that you want to. It's going to last for. Aside from that, you can just choose a procedure number, and you can just pass in description, and then you can click on add procedure to get it added. Okay, aside from that, you can also edit this. So if first you can select this, and I click on edit, and I can see I can now go in there and I'll edit as well. And I can also delete as well. So if I want to do this, I can select this and I click on. Are you sure I want to do this? If I click on cancel, okay, so cancel means it is deleted. So we just look into that when we start going through. Also, you can see now it is in here already. Now, if I want to delete this, I can just click on. Are you sure I want to do this? So as soon as I click on, yes, you can see it is off. As soon as I refresh this, it is off. Okay. And now the next thing that we're going to talk about here, that's the manage origins. So you could have added country images over here. Now that's the country name. Okay, these are the category IDs. And now this, you can also add the same thing. You can add country name with the image, and you can perform edit and also delete as well. So you can see that it seems we are performing the CRUD operations using the DataGrid. And at the end of the day, we are going to display them in view like this. So if it is administration side, maybe a client can see this, and the administration can now add or merge the recipes and the procedures and origin as well. So you can see this is just a simple mini project, but it actually has some features in it that can help you to know how to use this component of Syncfusion and other ways of using other components, and also something well in this Blazor web application. So let's start. We start by creating a new web that's going to be a Blazor server. Okay, so you start by creating a new Blazor server project. So let's get into that. So I have a Visual Studio over here. Now this is the one that we just gone through, so I'm going to close all of this and I'm going to create a new project. I'm going to name this as demo. Okay, so this is a demo Blazor recipe or Blazor server recipe. So let's start. So new project. Let me stop this first. So Blazor server application. Now the name is going to be demo. Maybe Blazor server recipe. Okay, so demo Blazor server recipe, and that's going to be the mini project folder. I'm going to click on next, and then the framework that we are using here, it is the 7.0, so we choose that. So after creating this project, the next thing that we can do here is we have to install our packages, and that is what we're going to be using. So as I said earlier on, we are going to be using Syncfusion, drop down, grid, pop-ups, navigations, input, and calendar. Aside from that, you also have to install design. That's for EF core design. You want to install the dependency injection. That's for automapper. And also you want to install the database management system, and that is the SQLite. So we have to install these packages, and I have them here. So these are the packages that we have to install. So pause the video and I'll try to install them one after the other. But for me, I'm going to copy all this. You know that I've installed this on the another project already, so I have it. So I'm going to copy this. I'll go to Solution Explorer. Then I'll just offload this project. So unload this project. Then where I have the project settings, I'm going to put it over here. Okay. So I'll type in here as item group. Then I'll paste all of this. So all right, so I can see we have this project references and they are added. So let's close this. This has to be closed. Okay. So as I said, I can now save this. Then I'll go back to Solution Explorer and reload with the dependencies. So from there, I click on dependencies, and now you can see manage NuGet packages. Okay, so here you can see that you're going to have all the packages that we just copied. You can see they are all installed over here. So you can also do the same, just install them one after the other. And there are even updates. So let's see, we can update these, the ones that we can update them over here. Okay. So let's do that to have an updated one. So as they are done, let's build the project and see if everything is working as expected. All right, so you can see that it is now done, and let's run this project and see the default boilerplate that we have. So let's run this. Okay, so you can see that we have it, and it is actually working as expected. These are the default tabs which were created and added. So we've done nothing here. Okay, and you can see we have a local host, and our port here it is 7000. Maybe yours will be different, but that's the port over here. Okay, so when you go to the source code here, I'm not going to go through the Solution Explorer here because I presume you know, or I assume you know the basics of this. So I'm not going to go through this. Let's go straight to the mini project today. Now, once you are done with it, the next step that we can do here is we have to add the namespaces that you're going to be using. Okay, so I'm going to just copy it from here. And now what we're going to do here is we go to our import.razor file and I'll add them here. So these are the Syncfusion namespaces, or that's the using spaces that we have to add them. So we are using Blazor, drop down, grid, pop-up, navigations, input, notifications, and calendar. And I'm going to also use system.io for an image selection. Okay, so we're going to use this. Let's save that. Let's also go to the Solution Explorer. That's going to be the program.cs file. And now let's configure the use of this Blazor Server namespace. So let's register the service over here. And it is builder.services.add Syncfusion Blazor. So we have to also add this. Normally, you have to also get the license. So currently, we are not using the license for now. So as soon as we decide to use any of the components, we're going to have a pop-up that we should register. So maybe when you get to that, you can just go in there, register, and grab a license key. So I have a video on that, how to claim free licenses or community licenses. And I'll leave the description so you can also check on it. If you're not having a community license, you can just click on it to go in there and register. Okay, so now it seems we are done with that configuration here. The next thing we're going to do here is we're going to install our, when we check this, we installed our SQL server, that's SQLite, yeah, with the entity framework called design. So these are the database tools that we are going to be using. So you can see from the properties, you can see we've installed the design, the EF core, automapper, and also the SQLite. Okay, so that's a database that we are going to be using. So we have to go in there and create our connection string. We can do that in the app.setting.json. So here, let's specify our connection string on top here. So maybe I would like to paste this, and that's the connection strings. So we have a default connection, that's a connection name. And now the data source or the database file that we're going to create as an SQLite DB, the name is recipe DB. So I'm going to name it as demo recipe DB. All right, so now we are done with this. The next thing that we can do after creating this connection string is we have to go in there and create our model. So what's the model that we're going to create? We're going to create a model whereby we can assign or we can use that model to create the database. Okay, so we have to create the first folder, and we're going to name that folder as models. Then we're going to create another folder as entities inside the models folder, and then we go ahead and add our models in there. So let's go to solution, right click on the project, let's add a folder here, and this is models. So you have to stop debugging. So models, then inside these models, let's create another one, which we're going to name it as entities. Now inside this entity, we are going to create a property, or that is a model here. So first of all, let's create a model called category. So let's go to right click on this, add, and then let's click on add class, and here you're going to say category. You could have, or we can also name it as origin or country, any name that you want. Okay, I'm going to leave this as category. So in here I can decide to add this, and let me add one, and that is an integer here. So this is going to be the ID. So you want to have the category name, or that's going to be the country name. You want to have the country image. Okay, and now here you can see that we are creating a relationship here. That's a list of this recipe. So we haven't created this yet. So let's copy this, and now let's go to the same entity. Now right click, and now let's add a new class. and name this as recipe. And now in this recipe, we are going to add few things or few properties here. So these are the properties that you want. You want to add the ID, recipe name, description. You want to have a rank, and we are specifying the time only. So you want to get the time that we're going to use. You want to have maybe a general image. You want to have date time, that's the date the recipe created. And here you can see that you're also creating another relationship here. That is a list of steps. Now you can see we have this relationship over here, category, and now you can see we have the category. And I perform or specify the category ID. So here, if you compare with the category, it is one to many. Okay, so here it means one recipe is going to have, or that's a one category here, is going to have a list of recipe. Okay, so one origin. So if you choose maybe Scotland or Ireland, Ireland is a category, and it's going to have a list of recipes because you have a lot of recipes in that country. Okay, so that it is one to many. So one category, many list of recipes. And that is why we specify this over here as one to many. Okay, and now when we check here, we also specify another steps as procedure, and that is the process. So you can see we are having a list. So it means one recipe, you want to have a list of procedures. So one to many. One to many. So you can see we are having this relationship inside the models. You want to combine the models together. You know, we want to perform database redundancy by just normalizing the database. You want to exclude using component or using properties in 2 or 3 models. No. So we like to create simple tables, then we link them together. Okay. And that's what we call database normalization. So you need to normalize them, grouping them, then we have a relationship that linked them together. Okay, so now let's go in there and create the next one, and that is a step. So let's copy this and let's create it. So one recipe here is going to have a lot of steps. So these are the properties or the attribute that we want to talk about the recipe. Aside from that, where are the steps? Let's go in there and create the steps. So right click on entities, add then a class, and you're going to name it as step. So in this class, what are the things that you're going to be using, or what are the things that we need in steps? Now we just need the ID. We also need maybe a step number, a procedure number, and we need a title, description, time needed for this particular step. And now you can see we have the recipe ID. So here it is one to many. Okay, so one step is related to one recipe. So that's why you can see we have the run one over here, and we specify this recipe ID. So you can see we have the procedure number, title, description, time needed, and the two these guys, and that is the recipe, and we have the recipe ID. So this is actually the relationship. So this, I'm going to provide the value for this. You're going to provide the value for only the ID because you want to refer the recipe here as a foreign key in this. Okay, so we have our models created. But when we are done with this, you know, we have to create our connection application, that's connection class. And I normally call it as AppDB context, application or database connection or context file. So let's go to this data folder, and I'm going to add a class, and this class, I'm going to name this as AppDB context. So AppDB context. Now with this AppDB context class, what are the things that we can or we would like to have in this? We're going to specify our database here. Okay, so let's see what we're going to do. First of all, we have to create a constructor, and this constructor, the application has to inherit from a DB context class. So DB context, and it's coming from the EF core we installed. In that, we create a constructor, you pass in the same class right here, and it is inheriting from the base option, that is the DB context here. In here, we have to specify our databases and our tables as well. So if we perform database migration, we want to use this models here to create table, separate table. So use this model, create a table name as recipes. Use this model, create a table as this, and that too. Now the table columns we are telling the EF core to use the property that we specified over here. So when you go to steps, you're going to have table column of ID, procedure number, title, and so forth to the recipe ID. Okay, and so that's what we are doing here. We can now save this. After doing this, the next thing that we're going to do here is we're going to perform database. Is it migration? No, we have to register it first. So let's go to Solution Explorer. We go to the program.cs file, and in here, that is where we are going to register our application. So inside this program.cs file, we are going to add this. That's a builder.services.add, and it must come before the build. So put it on top here, and we are saying that builder.services.add context. We specify database connection, then pass in these options, and we are using an SQLite. We get this connection string from this configuration file. That's the appsetting.json. And that is it over here. This one, we get this connection name, and now we are saying that in case there's any issue at all, throw this exception. Okay, now we are done, so we can go ahead and perform our database migration. But first of all, let's build this project and see if everything is working as expected. Then we can go ahead and perform database migration. Alright, so you can see it is now succeeded. Now, maybe you ask, what is database migration? So it is a way of telling EF core, that's the Entity Framework core, to create database table, to create the database itself, and create the tables, and also create columns inside the table for us without manually doing it. So instead of you to create a table yourself, launching your maybe SQL Server Management Studio and trying to create a table yourself, create the columns and all these tabs, you decide to skip that by using this database migration. Okay, it's a powerful package that we can actually use. Now to do that, go to Tools, and I go to NuGet Package Manager and our Package Manager console. So here we are going to install going to perform the database migration. Remember that we install one package known as Entity Framework Core.design, and that is the reason why we install that purposely for this. So let's clear this, and .NET. So if you want to see test if .NET is installed, if not, then you have to install the EF core.design. So as you can see, it is installed over here. And so .NET EF migrations, and add. So I normally name this as first. So EF core migrations, add first, and this first is the name. Here it is changeable dynamic, so you can change it to any name that you want. Let's specify the output. Open a folder called data, create another folder called as migrations, and do your stuff in it. But we're going to have an error here because it is saying that no project selected. So let's see ls, and I can see we have this. So let's copy this project name, and now let's change the directory to that project. So cd, and now let's paste it. Now if I type in ls, you see we are inside the project now. We can go ahead and perform our migration like this. So it's going to build this, and now let's keep an eye here. You can see that it's going to create a folder called migration inside this data folder. So let's see. Now it is building this, and now it's going to create a folder here for that. Alright, so you can see that it just popped up, and migration. So if I click on this, you can see we have the database app connection class created over here. Now once you're done with this, we have to update the migration of the database so that the model that have been identified over here can be created. So you can see we are creating database table name of categories. We are adding the following columns, creating the name as recipe, add the following columns, creating a procedure, add the following columns, and I can see these are the constraints. Okay, so you can see we have the primary key and we have foreign key. Okay, and you can see each table has the same primary key and foreign key because we created a relationship between the tables. and that is this one. So you can see, and now we can also drop the table. We can drop this procedures table, recipe, and also categories table by using the down, okay, or the migration drop table, and we can do that. All right, so let's see, let's update. So I'm going to say .NET EF core database, then update, passing the name that we use for the migration name as first, and I'll click on enter. Now this is going to run this EF core, and it's going to run this migration file and get us the migration, or get the database and its related component that we need for this. So let's wait for that. Yeah, so you can see now it is done. You can see that we have a database created and it's over here. In order to view this database, you can't open it here. We need another software that is going to be the DB browser. So let's try to launch the DB browser. So DB browser, and it is over here. So let's see the DB browser. Let me just move it from this screen to, okay. So you can see this is the DB browser. If you're not having this, go to the internet and I'll type in DB browser for SQLite. You can download this. Now if I click on open, let's navigate to the local disk and a folder called project, and I have my temp mini project, and you can see this is our project folder. Open it, and let's open this. You can see we have a demo recipe DB. So this is a database. Click on, because you want to check here, the extension is over here, that's SQLite, and now this, so click on open, and you have the table or database open. So you can see we have these are the table that have been created, categories, procedures, and a recipe. So if I click on any and I click on browse data, you can see that they are now empty database. You can see they are all empty. So meaning we have our table and database table created successfully. Okay, so now we have this. We can just go ahead and now save everything here and then close all tabs. The next thing that we're going to do here is we have to create our services. Now what are these services? These are the files or the method or the properties that we need to create so we can have connection to a database, make a query, and also insert data and do all stuff as well. So here a service comprises of an interface and implementation class. So we're going to create an interface which contains the method names. Now the implementation class is also going to contain the method definition. So what the method is going to do as soon as you call it. So we're going to call the method through the interface, and the interface is going to call its implementation from the class that you're going to create. After creating these two classes, we have to perform dependency injection. We have to inject this class together. We have to create a link between the definition class, that's the implementation class, and also its interface. So as soon as you call the interface, it knows where it's supposed to go there for the implementation. Okay, so let's create a folder for that. And we're going to do that inside the data folder. And now let's create a folder called services. So maybe we can add services here. Now aside from that, let's create an interface over here. And the interface is going to be let's say it's an recipe service. So let's create add, you can create choose class, but we're going to use the class. We're going to use this interface, and I'm going to say that this is stand for interface, so recipe service. And this recipe service, we are going to also create a class that's going to be the implementation class for it. So the same place, let's add a class, and now instead of saying recipe, there is no more an interface, so we say recipe service. So you can see we have our two classes or two models created. Okay, so let's save them, and now in here we are going to create a method inside the interface and going to create a method definition inside our services. At the end of the day, we're going to join these two models together inside the program.cs file. So before we forget, let's go to program.cs file, and now let's create a dependency injection because I normally forget this. So I'm going to paste this here. You can see we are using program.services .ascope, and now we are using this iRecipe service, and I will call this recipe service. So we are creating a relationship between this implementation class and also its master interface. All right, now let's go to the service here, and now this has to inherit from the recipe interface. Okay, we can also create a constructor for this, and when you go to this recipe service, what are the methods that you're going to use here in our project? So let's first have our first method in here. So we first want to create a recipe for our category or our origin. Okay, so recipe category or recipe origin, we are going to use this. So you can see we want to return an integer. We want to return this model category. We want to install this list. You want to install I want to get the list here. You want to also get the integer here. These are the names. So we're going to perform update and add through one interface. We're going to get category by ID through one interface. You want to get list of category model through this interface, and also we want to delete this category by using through this interface. But if you check here, you can see that you have this object here, these models here. Now these models are not yet created. So why did I use this model? You know, we have our entities over here. When you check our models folder, you can see we have a folder called entities. Now these entities are what we use in database. So we don't want to touch any of this model. In a normal sense, we have to add this required attribute on top. Maybe you can specify the attribute or the properties over here with using this different attribute. Okay. Now we don't want to touch it because this is specifically for a database. So you rather want to create another model, and that's going to handle that. So anytime that you want to do something inside the database, the model that you're going to create is going to handle that model as a DTO. You're going to handle that model into this original model here. Wherever this original model is going to get it to a database and then get things from the database. So this model that we create as an entity here can just go into database and also come out from the database. Now when they come out, we create our models over here, and these are the DTOs which are going to handle the data from these models, and that's the category, recipe, and our steps, and now display to the user. So the category model that we're going to create over here is going to be like a middleman. We're going to handle between the user and also the database or this entity models. Okay, so before we continue with that interface here, I want us to create this models over here so we can understand what we are about to do. So in here, you can just copy this category model from this. And now let's go to the models, not the entities. We go to this model here, and I right click, and now let's add a class. Now this class, we're going to name it as category model. And now inside this category model, what are a few things that we're going to get? You're going to be using the same models as created for our entities. But this time around, we're going to perform some attributes on top. Now, what are these attributes? These are the required attributes. So it means that before a user tries to send, you want to have this required. This data or this property must have data. Okay. So let's also make this as now. So this data or this property must have data before we can send the data to the original one. That's the entity model or entity category model. All right. Now once you're done with this, let's also do the same for the other one. So recipe, we can just go in there and also create a class for this recipe. So let's do that from here. Models. Then let's add a new class. And now this is going to be a recipe model. Now with this recipe model, we want to also have the same thing, but this time around, you want to have this attribute on top. And you can see we want to modify the names as well. So this required the name that you want to use instead of this recipe name. You want to space it as recipe name. And now you want to specifically specify the data type here as time. You want to also display this as image instead of this general image. Okay. And that is what we are also doing over here. You can see we are adding a required attribute on any that we want. Okay. Now let's also do the same thing. The last one, that's going to be the step models. Now this step model, we're going to also create over here. So let's add also a class. And now this is going to be a step model. So with this step model, what are the properties that you also want to use here? So we can also decide to use maybe ID, the same thing, and also add properties here. Okay, so we can also add this required properties. Let's do that. So this required, and we can just go ahead, copy this, and now we can put it on top of the properties that we have stated. Okay, so they're supposed to be in here. All right, and now you can also specify, since this is time only, we can also go in there to this recipe model, and now we can just grab this property over here, and now we come to the step model, and we can just specify it on top over here. Okay, and also the display procedure number, we can also do that as well. So let's see, we can just copy this, and now we go to this step model, and now on here, top here, we can just pass in, and now we say this is procedure number or step number. So procedure number. Okay, now we can now go ahead and now save this, and also this is time needed, so let's also make a copy of this, and we can also add this. So since we have this required already, let's move this required, and now let's specify this at time needed. Or we can make it as duration 2. All right, so we have all our models created. So these are view models that are going to be using for getting data as a DTO. That's the data transfer object from the database entities and between our client or the users as well. Okay, so we can now go ahead and now create our interfaces. So we have the category 1. Now let's also get our recipe 1. So this for the recipe. We go back to this interface, and now here, control period, I think it's going to add the models on top as a namespace header. Then let's add this a recipe. So we are making a copy of this and now changing the models in here. Okay, so that's what we are doing. Now the next thing that we are doing here is, so you see it is the same thing. Now let's also do the last one, and it's going to be the procedure, so the steps. So let's grab this, and I'm here, paste it here. So these are the steps. We can add, we can also get by ID, get step by recipe ID, get all steps, and now delete step async. All right, so these are the interfaces that you want. Now when we go to the service, the implementation class, control period, then we are going to implement all the interfaces here. So you see we have implemented all the interfaces, but you know with this, we're going to do them one after the other. So I'm going to just start from the first one, and that is going to be the category. Okay, so get category implementation class. So that's what you're going to use. But first of all, we have to create a constructor here and inject our appdb context class that we created. So let's do that. So you can do that by, you can type in CTOR to get the class created or the constructor created, or you can also type it in yourself. So let's say from here you can just type in either, you can just right click here, so let's say control period, and you can just go to generate constructor, it's over here, or you can type in CTOR and can also generate constructor from this angle. So for me, you know, I have the constructor already, so I have it over here. Now we generate this constructor, and I can see we are injecting this appdb context, and we are also injecting IMapper interface, and this is from the auto mapper. Okay, so you want to map our models. You know, we have two separate group of models here. We have our entities and we have our models. If I talk about models, I'm talking about this category model, recipe model, and there's a step model. Now, this could see this is also the entity models. So these are database model, and these are the user models. Now, from a database model, we have the same thing as the user model. So you want to convert, you want to hand data from the database model into user model. and vice versa. Okay, do the same thing to the category model to the entities model. So in such case, we have to create an instance of this all the time. When you have data or content inside this entity model and you want to convert it into this user model, unless you create an object out of the user model and then populate it. That is why AutoMapper is here to solve that problem. So instead of conversion, we are going to use the AutoMapper to convert all the models to one another. So to convert these entity models or the database models into user models. And I also convert user models into the database models. Alright, so that's why we inject here. Remember that we have installed this already, and that's the AutoMapper dependency injection. If you remember, we went to the packages and I've installed that over there as well. Maybe if you don't know, if you've forgotten, let's see. So when you go to project settings, you can see it's over here. That is what I'm talking about, AutoMapper, this one. Yeah. Okay. So now we have this initialized. The next thing to do is, let's first create a category service. Now in the category service, we want to first talk about the first one, and that is an add or update. So I'm going to paste this here, and it is for category service. So the first one is add or update. We first check if the model is null. Then want to return the status code of bad request, and that's going to be, I believe it's 401 or so. Yeah. So we want to return this bad request. And now here, in case it is not null, then you can see we want to convert, because here we are going to add or update. And here the database are going to accept category, not category model. So we have to convert from this category model into this category. Okay, that's the database object. And we're going to do it over here. So we're going to map the data from this user model into this database model. And now we check if the ID is not equal to 0, then it means we want to update. Okay, then we want to first check if it is found. If yes, if it is now return not found. But in case it is there, then you want to check if the category name and the image, it is not equal. It means data have been added or modified. If not, then we want to return the status code as not implemented. And in case they are not the same, then we want to update it. So you can see we are updating it over here. And now we save changes and we return the status code of OK. So OK here it is 200. It means the data has been updated. And in case it is new one, that is when the ID is 0, we want to now check if the name already exists. Then we tell the user that it has been added. So you're going to return a status code of not acceptable. It means you couldn't save it. And in case it is null, then we want to add it, and I'm going to save it, and I return the status code of created, and that is 201. So as soon as we see 201, it means a new data has been added. As soon as we see 200, it means data has been updated. Okay, and here we have to use the EF call. So let's use that. All right, so aside from this, let's go to the next one, and that is the delete. And now for the delete, let's have a look at this. So I can just minimize this. And the next step, let me give a var space. The next step here, that is for the delete. You can see we are returning an integer as well. And now you can see we want to check, we want to check if the ID is found in the database. If it is not found, return not found. But in case it is found, then you can see from here that we are removing it from the database, right? Then we save changes and return the status code of OK, that is success 200. All right, so that's for the delete. You can see it's very simple. Now the next one is we want to get a list of categories. So this list, to get a list, we can use that. So you can see from here that we are getting the whole list. If it is null, you want to return null. You don't return anything, you want to return null here. And if it is not, then we are mapping it, because you know the database come in with category, and that's the database model. We want to transfer this into or convert this into user model. That's the category model. So we have to use the AutoMapper to convert it here. You can see we are selecting from this mapper and we map this category model. So the results that is coming in here, we want to map a separate, that's why we use a select. So select individual objects from this list, okay, and now populate them over here. Now return as a country, not country, category model list, and return. We convert this to two lists, and I return. All right, so that's the get category. The next one I'm going to talk about here, it is get category by ID. So with get category by ID, this is what you want to do. We want to just grab this. So you can see from here that it is returning just a single category. And now in here, so we check from the database, and now from here, that's the next one. So get category by ID async, we do the same thing, and now you can see we are mapping it to this category. We map this model, that's the user model, from this database model and return. Okay, so that's going to be for our category service. Now we can just minimize this, and now let's go in there and implement our data service as well, and that's going to be the recipe service. So we are doing the same thing over here. So this I'm going to do. Let's see if I can just grab this from this category service, and that's going to be the recipe service from this. And we are doing the same things, as you can see, just that from here, instead of using the recipe or using the category model, we are using the recipe over here. So return this bad request when it is null, we map it, and we check if the ID is greater than 0, it means we want to update. So we do this to update it, and now the next thing we save and return OK, that is 200. And in case it is new one, return 201 that is created. So add it and now save. Okay, and that is this one. The next thing to do here is we're also going for the same thing as delete. So let's delete recipe. So to delete that, we are going to also use the same thing here. We check from database. If it is not, return. If you have it, remove it, and now save and return 200 as the status code. Okay, now let's get a list of recipes from the database that the user has added. So to get a list, we are also using this list model, and I return the list if it is null. If not, select them from the model and convert it to user model, and I return it as well. Okay, now let's see, get recipe by ID async. So you want to get a specific recipe. As soon as you pass in the ID of that, and as you can see, it's accepting an ID, and it is returning as a recipe model. So you first get from database. In case it is not, return now, but in case it is found, we map it from this recipe database model into this user model. Okay, then return. All right, now the last one is we want to get recipe by category ID. So you pass in this category, and now we want to grab all the data related to that. So pass in this country ID and get all recipe related to that country. Okay, that's what it means, and that is what we are doing. So you can see we are returning a list of this recipe model. We pass in this category ID as this country ID, and now from here you can see we are selecting where this category ID is equal to this category ID coming in here, and then here we are including this category table. Okay, and I return to list, and here we map it, and I return it. So AutoMapper has made it very simple for us. If not, we have to create a separate model to convert them into this user model. Okay, now let's see. So now we are done with this service for this recipe. Let me minimize them, and let's work on the last one. That's going to be the step model or the step service. So with the step service, we are also doing exactly the same thing as we've done for the two previous models or services. So here too, we are checking. We want to add or update step async. We do the same thing from here, as you can see. So reading it yourself, you map it, we check it over here. Then if it is greater than 0, update. If it is less, then save it and return the various status code, as you can see from here, OK, and 200. All right. Now, if you want to know this status code, what it means and what the value for each code, maybe I'll leave a link to a page where you can have a look at all these codes over here, so you can know where to return, which one you want to return. when a process or an operation fails or succeeds. Okay, now this for the update. Now let's go for the delete as we've done earlier. So for deleting 2, we are going to be using the same thing. The space here, it is too big. Let me make it small. Okay, so delete, we did the same thing. Check from database and I'll remove it and I'll save. Next thing is you want to get the whole list of this. So getting or grabbing whole list, you want to use that. So get the whole list here, return now if it is not found. If not, then map and return to the list. The next thing is we want to get step by ID. And now in here, we get step by ID, passing the ID step, and I get from the procedures table. And here check if it is null, return null. If it is not, then map to this step model and I return. And now we have the last method that is known as get step by recipe ID. So you want to pass in the recipe ID and I get all the steps. So if it is the first method, if maybe look at this one that we have created, what are the steps? We grab the steps from the database using the recipe ID. Okay, so we can display all the steps. So these are the services that we need to also create. So let's minimize them. So we are done with our interface and our service. So as you can see from here, we have 3 groups of services that have been created: steps, recipe, and also we have a category. Once you have an constructor initialize and our AppDB context and the mapper interface is also initialized and injected here. Let's save this. Now once you are done, you can see from here that we created this mapper interface, but we did not register. We did not create any profile. So let's go in there and register this mapper first before you create our profile. We can do that in the program.cs file. So let's go to that place and we are going to map it over there. So program.cs file, and now before this builder, let's put it beneath here, and let me put it on top here first, then let's map it. So we're going to add automapper, then type of program, then .assembly. So that's what we are doing. Aside from that, let's go in there and create a folder and I name it as profile. And now with this folder, that is what we are going to create our mapper profile in. Okay, so here, let's go to the data, right click on the folder, and I'll add a new folder known as profiles. Now with these profiles, we are going to add a class, and now this class is going to be your auto mapper profile. So right click on these profiles and I'll add a new class. The name is auto mapper profile, and now with this auto mapper profile, we want to now perform this simple things here. So first of all, it has to inherit from profile, and this profile, it is from this auto mapper. So it is from this auto mapper here. Now inside this, we are going to map. So we create a constructor here. As soon as this page is called, or this class is called, start using this. Now you see we are mapping it from this category model. So as you can see from here, it is from cat to model, and this is not from cat. So here I want to change it from database to user. Okay, so to user, and now here it is from user to database. So if the database want to get something to the user, it has to map it from this database object into user object. And if it is from user to database, it has to map from user object into database object. Okay, so it can be used in database, and here so it can be used in the user model as well. So that is the thing that we need to do here for our profile to be created. All right, so that is it. We are done with this one over here. Now the next thing that we're going to do here is we're going to create our own razor component, and I'll try to add this. Now you know, creating our designs sucks. It takes time to do that. So once I have this, you know, I'm going to just copy the source code or the code over here from the Blazor, and I'll paste it. But when you check the repo, you can just get everything over here, and we're going to also go through. Okay, you don't have time to tap into one after the other. If not, you're not going to finish soon. we want to also complete this as soon as possible. So let's see that first. Now, as we are done with this, our database is actually working. Everything as is also implemented and it is working perfectly. Although we haven't run it, but it is working, I can assure you. Okay, so let's close everything from here. So now let's go to the shared projects, and now the shared folder, all the components, that's the Razor component that we're going to be using here, are going to be used more than once. It's going to be used for either add and also update, to update as well. Okay, so it's going to be a purpose component for addition and also for updating the content. So let's go to the shared. Now you can see this is the default one that we have. So right click on this, and I'm going to add a new Razor component. So the name is going to be the category component. So this category component, we want to create this so we can enable us to add maybe the user, category data comprising of the image, also the origin or the name. Okay, so maybe you can specify the route here, since you're going to be using it for both purpose, for update and delete, for updates and also for adding the new content. So the first route here is not accepting any parameter, so that's for add, and the second one here, it is to update because it is accepting an ID as integer. We also have to inject our navigation manager and also our service interface that we created, and that is what we are injecting over here. Also, the next thing to do here is we're going to use an SF dialog. Now this SF dialog is going to allow us to have a pop-up so we can add category. So we do that. There's a dialog that we are adding. So it is a Syncfusion dialog. As soon as you see SF, it means Syncfusion, and that is also, you can see we are specifying the dialog template, and that is the message component that we also create a component known as message component, and that is all going to be used to display message. So in there we are using a message component as a component from Syncfusion. Okay, so that's what we're going to use to display message to the user as soon as operation is performed. We use an edit form. As you can see, this is an edit form that we are using, and we have just data validation annotation. That's a data annotation validator. That's right. And because we have the validation summary as well. We are using the text box. We have this validation message over here, and we are specifying the bind value. There's the most important thing here. There's the country name, and now in here we are using an SF uploader. So we are uploading the data, and we want to upload images. So just one. So you can see from here the allow multiple, it is just one first, and these are the specific extension that we want to get. Okay, and actually we have this button here. So we check if the ID is greater than 0, it means you want to update. If not, then display this. If not, then display this add procedure. So update and add is going to display respective to the content or the value for this ID. We have this cancel button. So this is just a UI that we have created. Okay, so down here, let's go in there and now add the code. So let's see. So I'm going to just grab this from here and let's paste it and go through it. So here, when you check this, what we are doing, the first thing is we create a parameter for the ID, and that's going to be used on top here. So that is the top here. Let me minimize it. You can see we have the ID here, and that is what we are creating to handle that as a parameter that's going to come in. Also, we have visibility, message, and navigation. These are all string, and the first one is Boolean expression. So is it visible? If yes, then make it visible. And now this is referring to the SF message that we created. This is a message component. So when you're done with this, you're going to create that component. So you're going to see or you're going to understand that. So we have to provide values for this. We have to provide values for message and navigator too. So as soon as it is this message component get its content here, it can just perform the task that it needs to do. Okay. Aside from that, you see we are creating this category model, and now this category model here, we create an object out of this. We create a title over here, Now, this is a method that we call when the button here is clicked. And it is calling this method create category. So that method that we call the service that you have created. Now we are going to perform a switch to the results. If it is 200, it is updated. If it's 201, created. If it is 400, off it required. If it is 404, that means it is not found. So meaning this. If it's 406, it means not implemented and it is already added. And if it's 501, that is node code change. And all these are coming from the service. So you can see from the service we added the various status codes, and that is it. So if you don't know what each code means here, I'm going to put it in the description. So check the description. I'm going to put a link over there. Click on it, and you're going to have a look at it with the various HTTP status codes that we have and how to implement them as well. Okay. Now, aside from that, we are clicking on this when the button is cancelled. So you can see from here that you have a cancel button from this dialog box, and that's a cancel button. So when it's clicked, what you want to do, you want to just return back to the home of these categories. And now that's when the file change. From here that we are using this SF uploader, and the value change, you're going to call this event. And now this event, you want to convert the image into base64 string. And now here, this method is going to convert the image. As you can see from here, we have we're going to look through the file that's coming in, and we're going to set the format over here. So we are checking if it is PNG, then we set the format as well. If it is JPG, we set, and if it is JPEG, we also set it. Aside from that, we create a file over here, and we request image file size. So we format it using the size that we want over here, and we do that. Aside from that, we're going to convert it into the base64 string, and we store the string here. So anytime that you click on the file upload to upload file, this method is going to execute and it's going to convert it and assign the string into the value, or that's a value for this object, and that's going to be the category image object. Okay, all right, so now we have this, but you know that we just created a string value called as title, and that's going to handle by the page title. So when the page initializes for the first time, you want to set this as what? Add recipe origin. Okay. And when parameter changes, it means we're going to update it, because if the ID it is greater than 0, then we want to say that update. But in case it is not, then add recipe origin. All right. So this is going to switch between the update and also add recipe. And now you can see from here, when the parameter changes, we want to get category by ID. So you're passing the ID, and I can see this is the same object that we have created over here. So it is going to handle that. And as soon as we have this bind value, this bind value is a two-way. So it's a two-way. It's going to bind from the database and also bind to the database as well. So we have that, and we display it over here. So we can actually click on the button to do that. All right. Aside from that, we have this update, and then this update and add, which is going to be switched based on the value, or the value for this ID. All right, so that's what we are doing over here. Very simple one as well. Okay, so let's save that, and this is going to work. So let's go to the next one. We have to also create another one, and that's going to be the message component. Okay, so we're going to create a component, a eraser component, and we're going to name this as message component. So let's go to the same set folder, add a new eraser component, and another set component as a message component. Now this message component, we want to just display a message. So we are using an SF message, Syncfusion message, and now that's what we are doing. We navigate here, we inject this navigation manager, and as you can see, we are using an SF message, and now we check, or we set the severity as what? Information. And as you can see, we are passing the visibility over here and the message here. So it means that when you call this component, you have to pass the visibility and our message. And I can see we also have the visibility over here. We have the message. You can see we have the navigated or navigate to. So we check if parameter of this change. You want to check if visibility is false. Okay, then do nothing. But in case visibility is set to true, then delay for 2000 milliseconds, and that's the 2 seconds. Aside from that, set visibility to false, and now set navigation to And here we are talking if navigation is not equal to empty, equal to null, then navigate to the value that is coming in from this navigated or navigate to value or the variable here, navigate to. And now we set this to true to force reload. Okay, to force reload it. So this is what you are doing. We want to automatically close the navigation as soon as it appears. After 2 seconds, it has to close. So that's why we are using this. So it's going to base on the statement or going to base on the visibility state. If only it is true. So if we actually check our category component here, you could see that here at the end, anytime that we call this, we provide a value for this. So this is a message. We set visibility true and we set navigated or navigate to this method. So when it comes here, what is the visibility here? It is true. It means display. Okay, display this. Then so aside from that, set the visibility to false. Then navigate to this component. Alright, so that's what we are doing over here. And as for that, this SF message, it is now solved now. Okay, so aside from this, what we have to create also is we're going to create a procedure or not. Let's first work on our recipe component first. So with the recipe, let's also do the same thing by adding a new component. And we're going to name this as recipe component. So let's clear all this. And now with this recipe component, we also need to specify, it's going to add and also it's going to update. So we can specify the route here, add and update. So we're going to receive an ID and we're going to add with no ID here. We also have to then inject our navigation manager, and this time around we need our IGS runtime 2. So we paste them here. And now this model. So in here, we are still going to use the same SF dialog box. Now this SF dialog, we are still going to inject our. So let's paste this. Let me hide this. Okay. So this recipe service control period, and let's add a service in here. So what we like here, we can just cut one of these, and I will go to the import. So solution explorer, and let's go to, I don't find it over here. Okay, let's go to the import here and import it once so we can use it all the time. So let's put it here. Let's save that. So when we go to this category, we can remove this, or we can even add this there. Import, and now we paste this as well. Okay. All right, so it is now solved. Now let's see for this recipe component. Now we are injecting this iRecipe service, and so with this recipe component too, it is the same thing that we did for this category component. The same thing over here. You can see we are using SF. This is a drop-down list, and we are using SF numeric text box and the SF text box as well. So you can see we have an edit form. We have the message component on top over here, which need the same parameters we discussed earlier on. Now also when you check here, you can see we have the text box over here, and it is accepting this model.recipe name. And here you can see we have the drop-down list. So this drop-down list, we have to populate the category or the origin and now display them over here. But for the drop-down list, the user can update and also can add. So when the user is adding, we check if the model is greater than 0. Initially, when the user is adding, the ID is 0. As soon as the ID changes, it means that the user wants to update. If the user wants to update, then we want to grab the current selected drop-down list value and display. So as you can see from here, we want to display it inside the placeholder. So we set the value here, and that is what we are saying. So if the ID is greater than 0, it means you want to update. If so, then this recipe model.category.country name, that's the relationship here. It has the data, and we can display it over here. But in case the ID is less than 0 or less than equal to 0, then it means the user want to add, then display this to the user. So this is going to be shown one at a time. Both won't show at the same time, one at a time, based on the update and add respectively. All right, so as you can see from here, we have this numeric text box, and now we want to add a number over here. So select rank is optional, and that is the rank over here. And you can see that we have description. We set this multi-line as true, so we can have it as a test area. We also have this time picker, and we set this to time only, and this is the time that you needed. So the step is 1. It means, and this is the format. You want to grab only the H, that's the hour, and then the minute. Making capital H here means you want to have this 24 format, 24 hours format. Okay, if you make it small, it means 12-hour format. You can do that. You can set this edit and also enable mask through and etc. All right. So the next thing is, you see we have the same upload. So you want to upload an image. The max file size is 1,000. It's more than 1,000, right? It is 1 million, and this is the main file as 10,000 over here. And aside from that, when event changes, it is going to handle that. And you know, we are converting it to basically 4 string down here, and that's what we're going to talk about next. We have the following buttons over here: update and now add procedure. We did the same thing to the category or the origin, so that's the same thing that we're doing here. Now let's check, let's have a look with the method that it needs to call anytime the event is clicked or the form is being submitted. Now in such case, down here we can just paste this here. Now the first thing that we do here is, as you can see from this, we first initialize it, we set its parameter, and now we create an SF grid, and this is going to be the category model. So let's first, so I believe this method is not here actually, because we're not using SF grid here, so we can clear this off. And now we can see we specify the visibility, the message in this navigator too. You know, we've done this in the category model, so the same thing that we are also doing here. Aside from that, you create a model object from this recipe model, and now you can see we have a list of category model as well, because you know we have to populate the category model so we can use them here for user to select the recipe type. And aside from that, we create a title here, and the title is going to be switched between an add or update. Okay, so when the page initializes, you want to populate or call this category, and now get the category list. Set the title to add food recipe, and now if this save recipe is clicked, that is a button over here. You can see we have an edit form, and this is save recipe. If this button is clicked, that is submit button is clicked, we want to now check if the category ID it is greater than 0. No, it is less than 0. It means we want to check. Okay, we want to say, we want to set this choose recipe origin. Okay, meaning that the user hasn't choose any category. So if the category ID is greater than less than 0, it means that. But in case it is not, then we want to check this too. We want to check if the time here it is a time main value. We want to tell the user that please select what the duration. But in case all of these have been solved, then we want to call this service passing this model. This is going to return an integer result. So we're going to switch as we did earlier on. We use a switch case to display the message over here. And now when this file change occurs, we want to grab, you know, this is also the same image change that we did. We're converting this image to string, and that's what we are doing over here. Okay, so with this method is accepting image size of 1 megabyte. So it can accept an image size of 1 megabyte and now convert it into base64 string. Okay, that is for the file image change. The next thing here is, you know, this get byte. You can just, it is not needed now. Okay, now the next thing that we are doing here, you can see, so this get byte here, it is from this method. As you can see, get byte, we pass in this fs. So that's why we need to comment this. So the image that we get, we are using this method to convert it into base64 string. All right, so aside from that, what we are doing here is we check, that is when the file change. So this method, you know, this was when I was testing, so I think we can remove this because we've done that already here, so we can clear this off. And now here it is a drop down list. So with the drop down, we are saying on value change. So when you check this drop down, let me minimize this and that. Okay, and also this and that. Okay, now when we check when image is selected, it is calling a method known as here, that's the onChange. We've done that. But if you check this SF drop-down list, it is calling a value or event called onValueChange when this is clicked. So you want to, as soon as the user choose any of the drop-down value, you want to grab the ID. That's why you specify the value that you want as an ID here. The text is what's going to be displayed to the user, and then the ID is what you're going to get. You know, from this, if we check this category, you can see we have the category ID and category name. You want to use the ID here. You want to store the name here. So this is the ID that we want to grab. And when you check here, when the value change, we can get its value using this. So you can see we are assigning this model.category ID to this argument.value. So this args here coming in from this category model, we can have access to its value here. And then this value here is an string, but you want to convert it into integer so you can store it over here. So that's why we're using this int.pass. Okay. And then when the button is cancelled, like cancelled, return to this home page for these recipes. And now here, when the parameter changes, that is when we want to update. Then we check if ID is greater than 0. Then first of all, get the content or get the recipe by ID, passing this ID. And now set the title to update food recipe and now return. In case the ID it is equal to or less than 0, then add food recipe because you want to add this food recipe, and I will check that. So this parameter set here is going to depend on this parameter value, and this parameter value here is going to also depend on the one that you pass on top here. Okay, so when this changes, this is also going to change, and as soon as this changes, it means parameter set, and now this event can now fire. All right, so that's for our recipe component. Now the last component left that we have to create, it is the procedure component. So to create a procedure component, we have to go to the same shared folder and I'll create a new component there. So I'll go to this shared, and let's see, do you have any error here? So okay. All right, so let's do that. When we are done, we're going to build this. So shared, right click on shared, and I'll go to add the new razor component. Now with this razor component, let's name it as procedure component. Now with this procedure component, what are the things that you want to do here in the procedure component? Now, first of all, we have to inject our header and also our navigation, because you know all of these, they are there for update and also for delete. Update and add procedures. So we specify that, and as you know, we have the knowledge about this already. So from this component, let me just grab this from this SF dialog. Now in here, let's paste this. So the same thing as we did in the message or that recipe component, we did the same thing over here. Okay. So we have this message component over here, and we are passing in this message and this visibility and this navigate to, as you know already. Also, now why this? Let's close this, and now let's open it again to get rid of the errors there. Okay, so you can see we have an edit form, and they have onValid submit as handle operation, and there is an object over here, step object. So when you come down here, we must have the step object here specified. Also, we're going to have this drop down, and we're also checking the same thing. If the ID is greater than 0, then we want to either display another one by showing the name that the user has selected already, or if it is not, then it means you want to display a new one, and now display a placeholder and select an origin. Okay, or select a category. All right, so this is what we want to do over here. Now, aside from that, so this is supposed to be select recipe. All right, we save that, and now we are binding title right here. We are binding this selection of a drop down. We have duration over here, as you can see the format, and that's the time needed. And you can see we have the procedure number as an SF text box, so we can now pass in the procedure number. So you're supposed to be numeric text box, that is it, and we pass in procedure number over there. And like see we have description. we set this multi-line to true. Now all this, we are accumulating them from the model. So when you check this model, you can see we have this category recipe. So when you go to this step, we have this, and these are the properties that we are creating. We want to get the procedure number, the title, the description, time needed, and then the ID. So you check this type here, the data type, and now use the component or the view. Is a component that's going to fit to it. You know, this is string, so it's going to be the SF text box. This is integer, so it's going to be a numeric text box. Okay, and now this, you know, when you talk about description, this is going to be a text area. So with the same text box, you have to specify a multi-line to true to have a wide area to type, and that is what we are doing for this procedure over here. Now let's go and talk about when the button is clicked. So if a button is clicked, what you want to do, we can also populate it as we did in the previous two components, and now in here we can paste this. So you notice the switch case as we've done earlier on is the same switch case that I am using over here, and as you can see from here, we create a parameter which is going to accept the input coming in. Aside from that, we have our visibility message and also our navigate to. These are string variables that we have created. Aside from that, you see we have this our populated object over here, recipe object, and you can see we have this steps object, and that's the step model. Recipe here is going to populate the recipe that we have, so user can now choose the type of recipe that the person wants to add its respective steps or procedures. When this method is clicked, you want to handle this, the response switch, and now display any of this based on the result value here, that's an integer. Okay, and here when it's cancelled, do this. Okay, when the page initializes, you want to load recipes because you want to populate it over here. So load it from this, and now this method is what you have the definition over here. So load recipes, the method is around here. So set the recipes object to the here. This is the list of objects. So set to the results from this service code. Okay. And now here, when the parameter changes, we check if the ID is less than or equal to 0. It means you want to add procedure. But if ID is greater than 0, it means you want to update. So load this. So we want to load this method because maybe this page won't initialize, and maybe the user want to do something. So we want to load this, call this method to load it again, and you want to get this object from the current step that has been selected, and now you want to call this and update that step. Okay, so this is what we are doing over here. Now once we are done, so you see this is also the drop down list. When value changes, you want to grab the recipe ID, and we are setting it to this ID as well. So you can see that here too, we're doing the same conversion here into an integer. All right, so that is it for this component that we've created. You see we've created 3 components. We could have created almost 6 because we want to do one for add and one for update. But you know, we do 3, and we want to perform 2 operations with 1 component. Okay, so we are using it very well. Now we have this, we have to click create view, or that's the whole view to manage this component. Now let's see. So I'm going to save all this, and now let's close all this, close all tabs. And now here, when we go to Solution Explorer, inside this we can minimize the shed. Inside these pages, that is where we are going to create our main components to render that or to display the information to the user. Okay, but before we do that, I want us to update this. Let's go in there and update the nav manager so we can display something over here. Now I made some few changes to this nav link here. So you can see we have, when you go to the shed, we have this nav over here. Let's see, we have the shed, and you can see we have this is the nav menu. Now this is the nav menu that we have here. So we have this 3, but I made some changes to this so we can add, or we can have a button to click. So you can see I added manage recipe, manage procedure, and also manage origins, and I just added their reference respectively, as you can see from here. Okay, and also to change the dark, you see here is a dark navbar dark, and I edited that. You see you're using the primary, so instead of that we can also change it to BG primary as well. Once you have the navbar dark, we can also add a BG primary, that's a background of primary, and add it to it. Okay, now we have this set. I believe we can also go to the main layout, and let's also check if we can also make some slight changes over there. So with the main layout, let's see if we can set this. Let's set this to BG primary and also font weight as bold. So we go to the Solution Explorer, main layout here, and now on here, let's have this, so BG primary. Okay, background as primary, text as light, and we want to bold the text that we see over there. So I believe the settings of these are done. We can save this, and now let's go to the pages folder, and now in here, the pages folder, we are going to create our 3 components respectively for each of the models that we have created. So let's first have a look at the first one, and that's going to be the manage category. So let's create a component known as manage category. So add a new component, and we name this as manage category.razor. So with this, what we are going to do here is also very simple. We have to inject our runtime, also our route. So we specify our route as categories. We inject our service and navigation manager and also JavaScript object. And aside from that, we want to now use this SF data grid. So we use an SF data grid over here. You can see from here using an SF data grid. And now we set the source to this category models. And now you can see we are adding this toolbar. So you want to add, you want to edit, you want to update, you want to delete, you want to cancel, and we want to set. Okay. You make a reference to this as a grid. And as you can see from the grid event, when you want to edit, you want to call this event. If you want to add or delete, you want to call this event. The value here is for this category model. And now we specify the various columns. So there's an ID, and definitely it's going to be the primary key of this. So if you want to edit, you don't want to edit this primary key. And we want to set this image. So we want to decide to use an image tag here to display an image. So you can see from here that it is the same grid column. By this time, we are performing a template. We are customizing this column to display an image as well. And the last one is the country name. And we display the country name over here. Okay, so with this, we can just go ahead and get the code for this. And now for the image, maybe I would like to have this style here to get the image as rounded shape. Because we have the border radius as 50. This is a little bit of CSS. And when you check the documentation, I believe this is found over there. So I'll leave the documentation and the description. So you can just check on that. And you're going to have a lot about DataGrid. It's actually broad. So you can have a lot over there. All right. So you can see from here that you make a reference to this SF grid over here. And now we are populating the list of this category model. And we instantiate it over here. Aside from that, when the page is called, we populate it over here, call this service, and I return this output. So in here, we've done this already, so we can get rid of this. Now, when a toolbar item is clicked, if the operation is what the action is add, you want to navigate to this category. If it is delete, you want to use this. Are you sure you want to do this? If the confirm, you want to call this service, and I'll pass in this row data.id. Now delete it, and I also get the current data, and I'll refresh the grid. But in case it is edit handler, then navigate to this category and pass in the ID. That's whereby that component is going to accept the parameter as ID over there. All right, so this is what we are doing, very simple one. Now for this all red lines, we can just go in there. Let's close this, and now let's go to solution, and let's reopen it again. Pages, and now from manage category, and you can see that errors, they are gone. All right, so aside from this, let's have a look at the next one, manage recipe. So with this manage recipe, let's also create a component for that in the same pages folder. Solution, and now pages, right click. Now let's add a new razor component, and now this is recipe, manage recipe.razor. And now in here, with this, we also have to inject the same thing as we did. So let's grab this, and now on top here, we are going to inject them here, recipe passing the route, and at the same thing as we did in the category. Aside from that, we also have to use this SF data grid to populate what we have, or to perform add and delete and etc. So with this, if we check here, that we are checking first if this current selection value is null. So where from this current selection value, let's have a look at the code so we can understand what this is trying to mean. So in here, let me come down, and now let me just paste this here. Okay, so we are creating a selection value ID as 0, and then the selection value as string. So what we are doing here is, as soon as I select, you want to maintain the state of the user. So if I choose maybe Scotland or Ireland recipe, and I navigate to another page and come back, I want to maintain the same Ireland there. I don't want to refresh the page, because you know when the page initializes it has to call the new categories over here, load these categories. You want to maintain the current one. So that's what we are using this current state to do that. Okay, so we are saying that this is the string value, and we are saying if it is null, if it is not null, then display the current state to this drop down list. But in case it is null, then display this. Maybe this we can just remove this from there, because you don't want to add it now. And now when value changes, we want to call a method over here. Aside from that, we are using an SF grid. We pass in the horizontal line over here to separate it. And now we are using an SF grid. We pass data source as recipes. And now you see we did the same thing as we did earlier on. We have the tools over here, and we have the same grid event, and we have allow adding, allow editing, deleting, etc. And as you can see from here, we are also customizing the page for an image. So we pass in template, and we do that here. And we populate, we pass in the column names. So recipe name, rank, time needed. We pass in the header text, the alignment, the type over here, and then the weight. And we do the same thing to this as well. So if we come down here, you can see we have this reference made. Now this is there to make a refresh to this grid. When we add or when we delete, we create a list of categories, a list of recipes, and now we create, you can see from this, they are all static because the value do not change dynamically unless you set it yourself. And now if you check here, when the page loads, we want to call this method to load this categories over here, and that's the method over here. So we check if the current selection ID is greater than 0. It means the user chose a selection or a value, a drop down value. So you want to maintain that and pass in that ID to get the data. In case it is now, then get the whole data at refresh it and get the whole data also. And now set this current selection value to empty. And here we also want to get the categories data. So we get the categories data from here and then display inside this SF drop-down list. Okay, so from here too, that is when the user select a drop-down. Maybe I want to go for a Scotland recipe, Ireland recipe, Germany recipe. As soon as I select that, this method is going to handle that. Because you know, from when we check here, the drop-down is having a method known as onValueChange. So when value changes, that's what we are doing. We want to check, convert this into integer, and now we want to pass it to this method. So get recipe by category ID. Okay, we get this recipe here, and now we want to display and set these guys here. We want to set the ID to the current one, the ID over here. So that as soon as the person navigates to another page and come back, the ID is still retained, and that selection that the person made in there can also maintain and now get the data from the database for us and display it in the SF data grid too. The same thing applies to when the action begin handler event is clicked. So if it is add, you want to navigate, and if it is delete, you want to also do the same thing over here. And if it is edit, you want to also return to recipe, passing the ID, and I make sure you refresh the page as well. Okay, so I can see that from this, it is the same thing that we have been doing all over the page, the 3 pages. So that is with this, so this can just make a copy of this to all the 3 pages and now make a change to that. Okay, so when you understand the first one, this you're going to understand the rest as well. All right, Now let's see the last component that left for us to create here. It is how to manage the procedures, or that is the steps. Okay, so let's also create that solution explorer. Now the same pages, let's add one, and that's going to be razor component, and we're going to say manage procedures.razor. So you can see that when we check here, we have only 7 components that we are using for whole this mini project. We have 6 over here, 3 here for our pages, and you see we have 3 here. That's the 4 for the shared project over here. And I'm going to add the last one that's going to display the whole results here into a screen for us, and that's going to be the read recipe, and that's going to be the last one. All right, so from this we can just get rid of the template one that we have. And for this managed recipe, we have to also inject the header. As you know already, we have to inject this. And aside from that, we need to also use the same SF drop-down list. So not the drop-down list, that's a SF DataGrid. So here, we paste it here, and that's what we are doing. You see, we have the same toolbar. We specify the column that we want, and now from here, we want to grab the step model, because you want to here, you're making a reference this. I try using this foreign key. You can see we have grid foreign key, okay, column. Maybe I'll take some time and go through it. But aside from that, there's an alternative way to grab the content from another model. You know, we are talking about procedures, and you want to add the recipe ID here, okay? You want to add a recipe name instead of the recipe ID. So to do that, we have to call a method known as getName, and I'll pass in this recipe ID so we can return a recipe name instead of the ID. So maybe if it is the potato chips or etc., that's going to be the recipe ID, and that's going to be the recipe name. The ID is maybe 1. Defaultly, here's supposed to be 1, but I don't want to display 1. They want to display the name of the recipe here. So that's why you can see we have this method as getName. We have our time and description also specified here. Now inside this, we can specify our method here. So down here, let's have our method specified. And now what we are doing here, you can see we populate the list over here from this step model, and you can see we have this SF grid. It is there to refresh. We have this list and the list of recipe and also the steps model. Now we call this method as load procedures or load step, and this is a method. So we are going to load the 2 steps here. That's the step and also the recipe. Okay, because we want to populate the recipe and now put them into a drop-down list whereby user can select it and now add 8 related steps or the procedures. And now when 2 buyers click, you know, we're doing the same thing from this. And as you can see from here, you can see that from here, grid.refresh, we are refreshing the content here all the time. And now the next thing is when it is edit handler is click, go to this, passing the ID. Now when you get to the same page, you're going to call the service and I'll get the current data from the service and now display to the user. Now the method that we have here is get recipe name by ID. Get recipe name by ID, and it is accepting a recipe model, and here it is return a recipe name. So this method we can use. I created one over here too, and it seems this is very simple. Now this get recipe by name, it is just okay. It's also return a list. But I believe this gets name here is very simple. So we return a list of this. So we pass in the ID coming in here. And now we check if it corresponds with what we have in the recipe ID. If we have, return the name. Okay. And return T. That's all. So with this, I believe we can just clear this because we're not using this anywhere in our page. So it is there empty. So we can just get rid of this. Yeah. All right. So that is what we have here. Now the last one that we need to do here is after doing all this, you want to display the current data as a home page. Okay, so to do that, we have to create one last component, and that's going to be, we go to this shared. Now shared, we have to create a folder known as maybe read recipe or something like that. Yeah, so read recipe. Now, before this read recipe, let's create a home page. Okay, so we can display, we can just direct all users as soon as you want to access this site, let's put them there. So you can do that in the pages. Now right click and I add a new Razor component, and I'm going to name this as home. So home.razor. Now in this home.razor, we want to just have a simple code here to display. So we inject the service over here. We call the service, and now we are looping to the service, and now creating a card out of it. So creating a small box, displaying the image on it, and also displaying this as maybe a thumbs up, shared, and our circle button. So these are icons that you want to display. As you could remember, beneath the each of the components or each of the image, you see we have these three guys over there, and that's what we are doing. So this is going to be the home page. As soon as the user tries to access this page, it comes to this page. And now the user tries to open, because you can see that from here, we are saying that navigate to this page, and I'm passing the ID. So if I want to navigate to this page and read more about this, can I do it? Yes. So it means we have to create this component here. And now let's go in there and I'll create that component. And that component, we have to put that in the shed, or we can put it anywhere that we want. Okay. So let's say this is read recipe, and let's go to solution. And now we go to the shed. Let's add one Razor component. And now here we are going to say that this is read recipe. Now with this read recipe, what are you going to do here? We are going to specify just a UI that we are going to design, okay, to display the list for us. So you can see we call the method, and now this method here, this content page, it is accepting an ID as a parameter after, when you load this page. That's for the route. And now you can see from here we are displaying description. The image is on top over here. We display description, country of origin, and we display the image here, the rank, procedures, and now from the procedures, you see we are looping through the procedure list from here, and I display it one after the other. And now we have these buttons on top. That's a card footer. We have them down here. Okay. Now let's see. So from this card, you can decide to keep it, or you can decide to just get rid of them. We actually don't need it here. And the next thing to do here is, you see we have a parameter here. We pass in the ID, and that's the parameter that we are getting it from the route here. Now when the page loads, and when the parameter changes, and if the ID is greater than 0, if it is less than or equal to 0, then we want to return. But in case it is not, then do this, populate this, get a service from this database, okay, and get the ID, and I'll set it over here and display it. So when you display this recipe model, you're going to have all the relations over there. Because when we check the service for this recipe model, let's check that this is a method known as get recipe by ID async. Let's quickly check from the service. And now when you check this recipe, get recipe by ID async, if I click on this, you can see it is including procedures, it is including category. So these are the relationships that it needs, and we include them over here. So as soon as you get the list, each list has all the data that it needs to get from the category and also from these procedures. So we can use that one to display. Alright, so I believe this is what we need to do for our mini project. Now to do the last one here, let's build the project first and see if everything is in order. Then we can now run it. Alright, so we see that it is succeeded. Now let's also build the same project again. So I'm going to go for rebuild this project. Now let's see to make sure it is working as we want. So now everything is set. Let's go in there and let's run this application and see what we have now. That's right. So our app is now ready, as you can see from here. And we can now go in there and change our title. So we can do that, and let's see what we can do from that end. So we're going to go to our page in here, and let's see from this navigation page. So we go to Solution Explorer, and then we go to this shared folder, And now let's go to the nav menu. And I see we have this demo, the name over here. So what I'm going to do here is I want to make a change, a slight change to this. And in that, maybe I can add some icons in there to get us the maybe the link that we want or something like that. Okay, so let's say I'm going to copy this. I have one over here and I'm using icons here. So let me grab this, and now from here I can just come to the next line, create a space. Okay, and now with this I'll paste this here. And now let's remove this. So okay, now let's save this and let's see if it's going to hot reload is working. So I believe it's going to refresh this for us. So let's try to refresh this and see if we're going to have that icon. Yeah, so you see we have this B icon. This B here, as you can see, these are icons that I use. And there's an info icon that gives you the I, and you see we have this bold icon that gives you the B. Okay, and we have this text over here. All right, so now we have this. Let's go in there and add category first. So let's change an origin. So if I click on this manage origin, it has to, okay, so well, we have all this, and I believe I found the problem. We did not add the references. All right, so let's see quickly. Let's go to our code, and maybe in there we can check our host file. Okay, and that host file it can be found in the pages. So we go to maybe our pages. Let's see, and now solution pages, and we have this host file. So we have to add our JavaScript and also the CSS as well for this Syncfusion. So I have them here, and let's first add the first one, and that is the theme. Okay, so aside from doing this, we can also add the script. So maybe I have a bootstrap here that I can add. So maybe I can add a bootstrap down here. And also we have to add the class, that's the JavaScript for this Syncfusion as well. Let's see, did we install the themes? So when you check this project properties, okay, so we did not install theme, so it means you have to install bootstrap theme to this project. Okay, so this can work. So let's try to install that. So let's right click on dependencies, and before that let's stop debugging. So dependencies, and now let's go to manage NuGet packages, and now under the browse tab you can install Syncfusion.themes. So Syncfusion, so we want to have the themes. Okay, so that is this one. Let's first go through. So let's see that Blazor .themes. I believe that's the right one. Okay, so let's install this. So apply. Okay, so it is solved now. I believe this will work. Now let's run this again. Okay, so it is now loading. All right, so if I click on manage origin, let's see what we're going to have here. So you can see we have this over here, and it's saying that there is just you have to get license. It is not, it's a trial version. Okay, so I can click on add, then from this add, I must have this pop-up over here, so I can add a country name. So let's say this is in Ireland. Okay, then here I can decide to choose an image for this. So maybe this is an Ireland, and I can decide to go for image for this. Let's see, from this download I have an images here, so let's choose one here for Ireland. Let's say there's an image for that, and it is updated. So I click on add procedure, and you can see we have successful created. So that is the message that we created. You can see it is over here. So let's maintain that. You can add more. We can also edit this. So if I choose this and I click on edit, you can see I can now edit it also, and I click on it. You can see we have the text here change to update, and then the title here is also changed to update. I can click on just cancel, and let's go back. I don't want to do that. Okay, now let's go to the recipe. So we have to add this recipe. And from here that I believe that this won't allow us to, unless you, okay, so when I click on this add, you can see we can now add a new recipe. So with this recipe, maybe let's see recipe 1. Okay, and let's choose an origin. So we have one created, so Ireland, and on the rank here initially, let's say this is the first one, and this is description. And here you can select the duration over here. So if it is 25 minutes for doing the whole stuff here, you can also choose an image. And with the image, let's see from I have an image here. So let's choose any of this, and that is an image over here. So click on add. So you're supposed to be procedural, add recipe instead. So you can see we have it over here, and the duration and the recipe description. Now the next thing is add procedure. So you can see from here too, let's refresh this. So I can click on this add, and I can see add title. So this is procedure 1. Okay, and I'll select recipe. So you can see the recipe 1 that we created has reflected here. And at the time for this specific procedure, let's say it is 10 minutes for the first one. The procedure number is 1. Description is maybe put something somewhere, and that's all. Alright, so click on add procedure, and you can see procedure created. Okay, so you can see we have it over here. Now when I go to home, you can see we have the image over here, the title of the procedure, the title of the recipe. We have the image, and you see we have these are icons. So we can just implement this using the context menu. As soon as I click on this, I can just decide to pop up something like using the dialog box, or maybe something like that to just display where you want to do. As soon as I click on this, you can see navigate to this readme. So that's a read recipe, and passing the parameter as 1. And we receive it over here. We get it from the database. We grab the description. We grab the country of origin. We have the recipe rank. This is a procedure. So it contains only one. That is step 1. Then we have this over here. Okay, so you can see this very simple one that we did. Very simple. So as you know, I'm not going to waste time to just add all this. From the intro video, I shown you how to do that, and I added one already. So I shown, and that's the same thing that you have now. So when you are here, you can just take time and try to add a lot of recipes and their images and their steps to this. That is it for this video. I believe you guys enjoyed it. I also enjoyed what you doing as well. I don't want to use 2 hours for this. We have 2 minutes left. So that is it. Thank you so much. So if you haven't subscribed, please then do subscribe to this channel, because it makes a difference with this. And also, thank you for watching this video as well, and watching the whole video from this Netcode-Hub channel. You can also support me, and you can also buy me coffee. You check the description. The link is over there, and I'll be grateful for your kind gesture. All right, so thank you. Take care of yourself, and don't worry, I'm going to do that's a mobile app version for this. So check also .NET MARI playlist over there. As you check for the Blazor playlist or the mini project for this, check the mini project playlist over there for .NET MARI. And you're also going to see this recipe app that you can install mobile phone over there. So you have a web app, you have a mobile app or desktop app. Isn't that beautiful? Yes. All right, so take care of yourself, and I'm going to catch you up in the next video.